Good afternoon. I'm Quentin Conway, your host for today. Josh is out. I'm in studio today with a very special guest and co-host, Mr. Albert Guillory, State Senator. How we doing?
Extremely well. How are you today, Q?
I'm doing fantastic. Not too terrible weather thus far. I don't know what the future holds in terms of storm systems, but great day to be in Louisiana.
Truly, there's nothing like spring in Louisiana. It's just a beautiful time of year.
Absolutely. We're going to go to a case of a car accident in Indiana involving an illegal truck driver. Gentleman crossed into the U.S. Illegally. He was known to be in the U.S. illegally, somehow obtained a commercial driver's license, and ran a red light and led to a fatality.
Another one?
Another one. Didn't we just see that come out of California and some other states with the?
I think there was one in Florida also. Yes.
I remember that one. That one was huge headlines with a semi truck that I think attempted to make a U-turn on an active highway.
That's exactly what happened. This is ridiculous.
At some point, something has to be done to stop this. It seems like the headlines on a daily basis contain something along the lines of an illegal truck driver either being in a major accident or a accident involving fatalities.
And this is not just a regular driver's license. This is a CDL. It's a very difficult thing to get under normal circumstances. But if you break into the country through the back door and you're in California or some other liberal place, I guess they just hand them out to you.
Yeah, if our memory serves properly, Governor Gavin Newsom sued the federal government over their attempt to resolve the situation. The suit basically is the feds don't have the right to tell California that they have to revoke the illegal CDLs, and I'm just not seeing it. Commercial driver's license, that's nationwide.
It absolutely is. It's a sad thing. We opened Obama and Biden opened the gates to let a flood of more than 10 million illegal immigrants come into the United States. They cannot read, many cannot read or write English. They have flooded our schools with their children, and so now it's raised the cost of education tremendously, and it's a great distraction to American children who are trying to learn. And they flooded our highways with drivers who cannot read English or understand English. And they're driving up and down our highways doing all kinds of weird things. Like you said, making U-turns in the middle of a 4-lane highway. And we have to, it is time for Washington, D.C. to really crack down.
Absolutely. I mean, some of these trucks weigh up to 80,000 pounds. And, I want the person driving the truck to know our laws. I want the person driving the truck to have gone through some type of schooling. And there has to be some type of English proficiency.
Absolutely.
I mean, how are you going to read the signs if you can't read, if you don't speak or read English?
Exactly. And they're not just the standard signs, but they are emergency signs all of the time, which explains some specific emergency situation in a given place, and they're not able to read it, so they don't understand what's going on. We have to stop.
It's absolutely crazy to me that this is even a thing. I mean, if you can't read the signs, how did you read to take the test? There has to be some test to get this license.
Apparently, the tests are given in Spanish.
Wow. Wow. That is absolutely wild to me.
Certainly in California, you can take your test in Spanish or in English. And that is how many non-English speaking people get licenses, and they're driving on our highways, not just in California, which deserves whatever they get, but in innocent places like Louisiana.
Really? Man, that is crazy. What's the process? Do you know the process they're using here in Louisiana?
As I know, in Louisiana, you have to take your test in English, and you have to pass it in English to get a license. There's only one test.
Okay, okay. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, it's a federal motor carrier safety issue, so it seems like it would be nationwide. Um, I mean, what other languages are they going to add to the list?
Truly. And this is the only nation on earth where you have this multilingual kind of thing. I have a daughter who lived in Switzerland for many years, and there she had to learn their language. Her husband had to learn that nation's language, and after 20 years, he was still not a. He lived there 20 years. She didn't. He lived there, and after all of this time, he was still not a citizen, although he was there legitimately and had the proper documentation.
So I guess that's kind of like the U.S.'s equivalent to a permanent resident.
Yes, and he had a working permit, so we have some special things for people who come here to work.
You know, one of the things that worries me about the Californias of the world doing this with these licenses, it's the data that they're putting into databases that are shared across state lines. So data that goes into California may be accessed by other states. What happens to that data? What happens to those illegitimate licenses that were issued illegally? And how what's it look like to purge those records?
That's an interesting question. That that brings me to a companion issue, which is the issue of states and cities that permit illegal aliens to be there and to protect them. Sanctuary cities, they're called. Sanctuary states, they're called.
Like Minnesota and Governor Walls.
Perfect example.
I mean, the recent federal operation there, the only thing they had to do was work with federal law enforcement to hand over persons that they arrest naturally off the street in the course of their normal government activities. You know, when they get out of jail, contact ICE, let them know, and ICE will pick them up. They refused to do that. Federal agents had to take to the streets and, do basically basic policing.
Thank God for the National Guard and those brave people who were there on the streets protecting American interests and American values. There's some crazy people down here in Louisiana. We call them couillons. There's some couillons up there in Minnesota. The governor, the attorney general, these people who have until now just refused to work with federal law enforcement, refused to help us get rid of people who are in their jails, people who are in their courts violating our laws. They would not help us get them out of this country.
And we're not just talking about people who ran a red light either. We're talking about violent offenders, people who have done real harm, being let out of jail so that Tim Walz and the rest of that cabal can maintain their political talking points and message to a small group but loud voices within their state and within their cities.
And Congresswoman Omar, just as recently as yesterday and this morning, is calling for the abolition of not only ICE, but that whole agency, the whole enforcement of our border protection and immigration protection.
So really, it's just defund the police 2.0.
Exactly. Exactly.
Look, we're going to have to go to a quick break, but when we get back, we're going to continue on this topic and continue on Minnesota. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Josh Guillory Show. I am your host for the day, Quentin Conway. Josh couldn't make it. I'm here with our dear friend, State Senator Albert Guillory. How are we doing?
Doing extremely well. Great to be here with you and your audience, and with our Rumble and KLFY Plus friends. So we're all here with you.
Absolutely terrific people. Before we went to the break, we were talking about Defund the Police 2.0 and talking about how Ilhan Omar in Minnesota wants to end Border Patrol, end ICE, open borders, the whole 9 yards, the full progressive package. And looking to New York, we're seeing something similar. We're seeing the Democratic talking points, those progressive talking points that we've been told nobody wants to actually defund the police. Nobody's actually going to do that. Well, they elected a quote unquote socialist actually they elected a communist masquerading as a simple socialist.
True.
And the reality is he's trying to put into place the policies that we've been told will never actually happen. For example, cutting 5,000 police officers so that he can balance his city's budget.
Can you imagine anyone on earth doing something that foolish, especially in a big city, which is a crime-ridden city,
Absolutely.
as New York City? That new mayor, Mamdani, I cannot understand it.
And at the same time, pushing for a property tax hike, almost a 10% property tax hike to close a multi-billion-dollar budget gap.
We have opened our doors to many strange people who have come into our country, into our home, and they are trying to take it over. And this is a sad thing, a sad day for America. 5,000 police officers cut.
Yeah, a force of sitting at around 34,000 in a city of how many million people?
Yes.
Like how do you effectively do that? He's going to hand out free public transportation allegedly, and put free in quotation marks. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So he's going to do that, but he's not going to make the subways safe. So the buses and the subways may be free, but they're not going to be free from muggings. They're not going to be free from violent crime. They're not going to be free from it for families to be able to use them.
What he should have done is increased by 5,000 and made New York City safe, one of the safest cities in America. That would have been a real selling point, instead of keeping tourists away from New York. And I lived in New York a long time ago. I certainly would not go back there under these present circumstances. And if he doubled and tripled his police budget and made New York safe, that would bring people from all over the world into that once beautiful city.
Absolutely, and I think it would slow down the outmigration of people from New York to Florida. That has to have an impact on their budgets as people flee high tax states and leave for low tax states under Governor Ron DeSantis. You're seeing the same thing out of California, people fleeing to Texas. Right now in California, they're attempting to pass a billionaire's tax, which I don't know how that works. You're going to tax people one time, and you expect them to stay and wait and see if it's going to happen?
The interesting thing about California this year is that 250 Walmart stores are closing. 250 Walmart stores in California are closing. Two of the biggest reasons are the governor has increased the minimum wage tremendously, to the point where stores can't make the profit. A lot of small businesses have gone out. But also because of his approach to crime, they say that just go into a restaurant, into a Walmart or other kind of store and steal what you want, and nothing will happen to you.
If memory serves, they were essentially the thieves were forming gangs that would, or an organized crime rings that would go into stores and target specific products, wipe out the inventory, and they would just go across town to their own warehouse, put it online. So your online presence like Walmart, in some cases even like Walmart.com, Amazon, all these different online vendors, and sell the same product. In other cases, people would open neighborhood markets.
Amazing. Amazing
Absolutely
in
wild.
our country that we have that kind of humbug taking place. Instead of stopping the crime, making it an even playing field for every business and letting people, this minimum wage is the idea has been around for a very long time, but that is the bottom rung of the American ladder of success. You start there, you prepare yourself for the next step, and you prepare yourself for the third and the fourth, and on until you go as far as you want to go. But minimum wage has never been designed to feed a family, to buy a home, to send your kids to college. You have to prepare yourself academically and otherwise with experience to climb up that ladder.
And I think part of that goes to also looking at what avenues are available for someone that, maybe just graduated high school or they just left high school to make a living. And obviously, one of the first steps is a minimum wage job, typically. But the idea is, like you said, to be able to progress in education. And whether or not that is going to the trades, going to college, there are so many ample opportunities to develop skills that pay more money and be able to progress life further at a higher wage.
This really is, America really is the land of opportunity. But you have to be motivated to work. If you drop out of the seventh grade and you go in and start flipping burgers, and you get a $25 an hour for flipping burgers, there's no motivation for you
Right.
to better yourself, to create a family, to climb up that American ladder of success.
And to me, part of the minimum wage has to be an incentive to develop those new skills. And like you said, if you walk in making $20, $30 an hour, why would someone go and develop new skills?
Exactly. No motivation, sadly, very, very sadly.
We're we're going to continue our discussion on minimum wage with Senator Albert Guillory when we get back. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the Josh Guillory Show. I am your host for the day, Quentin Conway. Josh is out, and I'm sitting here with Mr. Albert Guillory, State Senator. How we doing?
Extremely well.
When we went to break, we were talking about people fleeing California for Texas and people fleeing New York for Florida.
Well, you mentioned the the decrease in safety in California and New York, and you called it "Defund the Police Part 2." That reminds me of some people from up in New York who are calling the SAVE Act Jim Crow Part 2.
Pooh.
I have to say a couple of things about that. First, that New York liberal, pink panty wearing piece of garbage has no idea about Jim Crow Part 1. I do, because I lived it. To hear him slur that period of time with this little trashy business that he's talking about. And let's talk about what he's talking about. The SAVE Act, which simply requires that people have ID when they go to vote. You have to have an ID to get a car, to get a license, or to buy alcohol, or to buy cigarettes, to do all kinds of things. An ID in America is just one of the most common things that there is. Anyone can do it. You don't have to have a college education to get it. You don't have to have a high school diploma to get it. All you have to do is go down and say, I want to get an ID. And the state gives you a free identification card. All you have to do is go and ask for it. For this creep in New York to say that Republicans are using the SAVE Act to try to disenfranchise black people and women, or to do something bad, some nefarious thing to them, it's so far-fetched that I'm having difficulty wrapping my mind about it. And I'm not going to apologize for saying the bad things I said about him, because I mean those things from the bottom of my heart.
Well, to me, it's righteous anger because he has no connection to the topic that he is using for his own political ends only. So it's not like he actually cares about Jim Crow 1.0 or 2.0. The only thing he cares about is his polling numbers with progressive voters.
Exactly. And they're using some of the worst race card garbage to try to convince voters, particularly voters who are not very sophisticated, to convince them that there is this terrible scheme to prevent them from voting. And there's nothing on earth about the SAVE Act that would do that. Just get an ID.
To me, there's a certain irony to the same crowd who demanded vaccine passports and vaccine cards to go anywhere, complaining about voter ID. Like to go to a restaurant in these cities during the height of the pandemic, you needed both an ID and a vaccine card that matched your ID. So to go to a restaurant, you needed multiple shots from a healthcare provider. You needed the paperwork from the healthcare provider, and you needed the paperwork from the government saying you are indeed the same person who got the shots. And to me, it's really disingenuous to have had that argument during the pandemic, and now all of a sudden, ID is bad.
That's the ultimate in talking out of both sides of one's mouth at the exact same time.
And normally, they tend to space it out a little bit more. This is more condensed. They're using IDs in one go round at one time, and in another go round, just a couple years later, it's racist, wrong, and Jim Crow 2.0.
New York needs to fall off into the water, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's unrecognizable from when I was a kid. I remember when I was in elementary school, my family took a car ride from Louisiana all the way up to New York all the way to Canada, Washington, D.C. It's one of those trips in childhood that just kind of guides you in life. Because I got to see the country pretty much in one trip.
How old were you?
I was probably, it was before 9/11, so I would have been in first grade. Matter of fact, I would have, no, I was going into third grade because we were in the Twin Towers about a month before 9/11 happened. And when I reflect on that, that also gives me pause.
I went to New York Theological Seminary, and so I lived in New York City for a period of time in Manhattan. And it's a place that I would not visit. I would not go back. I would not go and take my grandchildren to show them where I lived. It's just a terrible place now.
I don't think I would visit New York right now, especially with the planned cut to the police force. I mean, crime was already having an upward trajectory in that region, and now we're going to cut the public safety officials whose job it is to reduce crime.
And prevent you from owning a gun to protect yourself and your family at the same time.
Or even pepper spray. Some of these states even restrict pepper spray. I guess we'll eventually get to the point where it is in the UK where they also can't have pepper spray, but you can have a can of marker spray that you can spray on the assailant so that the police can more easily find them.
Assuming that they are around to be found, because you are more likely to be in a graveyard.
Absolutely. But hey, at least you can rest assured that maybe in a couple weeks someone will pick up that file.
We were talking about people in the North. The Department of Justice is in Detroit right now, and they are investigating schools and elementary schools in particular because those schools have allegedly been subjecting children to too much sexual orientation and sexual information.
That's just gross. Like kids, the push into our schools and our libraries with adult material is something that's so evil to me that I can't understand the motivations behind it.
It's sad. It's really evil. You're robbing a child of childhood and giving them really weird and false information that is not moral, is not biblical, is not it's not good for the child. Uh, we were all children at one time. I'm very happy that I was able to spend my 4, 5, 6 year um, top periods without having someone subject me to sexual information. And it's really, a lot of it is sexual misinformation, not positive growth information.
We're going to pick up this topic when we come back and continue our discussion with State Senator Albert Guillory. Stay tuned. Good afternoon. I am Quentin Conway, and you're listening to the Josh Guillory Show. Josh is out this afternoon, but I am graced with the privilege of co-hosting with State Senator Albert Guillory. How we doing?
Very well. It's beautiful outside.
It is a lovely day. Before we went to break, we were talking about elementary schools in Detroit, and talking about the recent process of introducing what we would consider adult material into schools by progressive groups and progressive organizations.
Yes. It's a very, very sad thing to rob a child of their childhood, and that's what's happening. The DOJ is investigating those Detroit schools, and I hope that they will come out of this with some clear definitions and rules that will apply to all of the schools in this country and all of the libraries that serve little children in this country.
And I mean, a lot of these schools and a lot of these libraries get federal funding. So to me, it's not too far off for the feds to be able to come in and say, well, we give you the money. We're going to set policies that are going to protect children and protect families.
We used to have a Department of Education that could have done that, but they were so far to the left that they were the ones who were pushing this kind of humbug on schools across the country.
I think one of the wild things for me about the Department of Education is that since its founding, test scores have consistently slipped. And one of the ideas behind it was, we're going to have a national curriculum, a national unified approach to education. And it's wild to me that since their inception, test scores have dropped. Student success has gone down, and the reading and writing proficiency is down, math proficiency is down. And at one point, the U.S. led the world in education, and it seems like that has slipped away from us.
Very sadly, that's true. In the 1940s, I went to a two-room school way out in the country, heated by a hot-bellied, coal-fired stove. 3, 4, 5 grades were in those two rooms, and the teachers taught us. We had used books, but they taught us with those used books. And when I left there, and of course this was a segregated school, I left there and went to another segregated school for the rest from grades 3 through 12. And we were able to learn. Our teachers taught us respect and discipline, and they taught us how to read and to write and to compute with mathematics. So it's when government got involved in it, things just went all to heck. It started to fall apart.
And I think that's probably a consistent track with any time government gets involved. We're going to see a loss of efficiency, a loss of quality. Government is rarely the answer to a problem. And we've definitely seen that with education. I remember when I was in elementary school, I actually went to this tiny school in St. Leonard Parish called Acadiana Prep. It's no longer a school. It's now a sheriff's department office. But when I was in fourth grade, I was the only fourth grader enrolled in the school. So they put me with the fifth graders. And about halfway through the school year, someone, I guess, realized, well, he's already having to learn the stuff from fifth grade anyway, by nature of being in the room. So they just promoted me to fifth grade. Now, I had to take a bunch of tests and prove that I was proficient in fifth grade math, fifth grade reading, fifth grade grammar, all that good stuff. But they just promoted me because I was the only one.
That's a great story.
You were talking about, being in a one-room, two-room schoolhouse, and I was like, man, I had a similar experience, but not entirely. The hallways weren't air-conditioned. Every room had its own little window unit, and it didn't have a cafeteria.
Air conditioning?
Yep. But it was a great school. The academics were great. The people were great. Everyone was really well behaved, and it was a good time.
My school sent 3 people to Harvard.
Wow. I can tell you, Acadiana Prep did not do that. But we'll be right back after this break. Stay tuned.
afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Josh Guillory Show. Q, take it away.
Well, in the break, we were talking about uh, Maryland a little bit and what's going on with their redistricting. It looks like there are moves to eliminate the only Republican held district in the state. And it appears that leadership, Democratic leadership in that state, may be bucking the National Party in disagreeing with eliminating seats and setting dangerous precedents.
This is a really special time in all of this redistricting business. The Supreme Court is expected to either, they're going to deliver a couple of decisions this February 20th and 22nd, and a decision will come outlawing racially gerrymandered districts either this February or this June. And so we expect major upheaval. If it comes this February, the Supreme Court could also require that Louisiana complete the process before the November elections.
Whoa, that's a fast track.
That's a very fast track. They could either demand that the legislature go into session and redraw immediately, consistent with its new decision, or they could appoint a special master to come in and draw the lines. There are several ways that it could be done. It's an exciting time, but racially gerrymandered districts are probably on the way out of America.
I think that would be a positive step. To me, districts should be drawn as geographic or as close to commonly recognized shapes as possible. The system that we have now, where we have districts that may span a state, uh, I can't help but think of comparing Louisiana's third congressional district, which is almost a perfect geometric shape, to some of the others, where you may have someone in North Louisiana have a district that goes almost to what, Grand Isle?
CD6, Congressional District 6 is the perfect example. From Baton Rouge to Shreveport, and passing through Cajun country. I mean, you have people who are big urban areas, people who are small rural areas, people who are French speaking, people who are English speaking. The French Catholic South Louisiana with the North Baptist in North Louisiana. You cannot expect one person to represent all of those distinct communities from Baton Rouge all the way up to Shreveport. It's ridiculous.
It seems to me some areas would have agricultural concerns as the primary issue, whereas others may have more traditional city-based infrastructure issues.
Exactly.
And how is a representative supposed to be expected to handle both sets of issues that are so different from one another and do it effectively?
And suppose someone wants to talk with, they have a burning issue and they want to talk with their legislator. They have to drive as much as 200 miles just to get to that person's office in Louisiana.
To me, that doesn't seem like that would have been our founders' intentions when they designed our system of government and our legislative branch.
They absolutely did not contemplate this issue. And I believe truly that if a person wants to be elected, they should go to all of the people and to explain their feelings, their plans, their values to all of the people and sell themselves.
I mean, I come out of the St. Landry political world, and in that world, you have to go knock on doors. You have to make phone calls. If you want to be an elected official, you have to go out and meet with the public. You can't just run digital ads. You can't just run ads on TV or radio. They expect you and demand of you that you go to their door, that you call them, that you ask for their vote. And talking about these large districts, how is someone going to be able to achieve that when, like you said, they may be 200 miles away? How
Exactly. Using St. Landry Parish as a perfect example, people like Cat Doucette, Howard Zerang Sr. and Jr., they were perfect politicians, and they went to every little nook and cranny of the parish, and they were well known to everyone in the parish. They knocked on all of the doors, went to all of the suppers, went to all the little events at all the churches, and they represented very well, and both of them represented over long periods of time. That cannot be done in a district from spanning the geographic distance from Baton Rouge to Shreveport.
I remember reading a book about Sheriff Doucet and back then, tracing his political lineage all the way back from all the way to Huey Long and the anti-Longs and the Longs, and it gave me a lot of perspective on how Louisiana politics really haven't changed much. At the time, there was one party, and everyone belonged to it, and we're starting to see people converge into one party again in Louisiana. However, we're seeing them bring values that maybe don't always reflect a conservative worldview.
That's an interesting thing in Louisiana. And what you're saying is absolutely true because in the legislature, for example, the legislature has a two-thirds majority in the Republican majority in the House and in the Senate. Yet we are handling Louisiana politics in a much more traditional manner. Uh, the insurance companies, the big oil companies, we are much even with a big one party, strong Republican party, we are very much traditional.
It's just anti-longs and longs with new labels.
Truly.
It's so wild the influence the Long family had in Louisiana politics, and no pun intended, how long their reign was.
And fortunately, there's at least one more Long, Gerald Long, who is still very active in Louisiana politics, and we expect him to make some moves soon.
I did not know that.
Oh, yes.
Man, that would definitely be a century-long political dynasty. And have we seen that before in this state?
Not as long as the Longs.
With that, we're going to have to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. I'm here with State Senator Elbert Guillory.